Hi everyone, welcome back to Cottoverdi. My name's Annette and today I'm going to be planting up some gorgeous bulbs. I'm going to be planting them into pots, so I'll show you how deep they need to be planted, how best to plant them to get the best results. These bulbs that I'm planting up today are very special to me because they are a gift from Peter Nyssen, and Peter Nyssen is the most fantastic bulb supplier here in the UK, although they come from the Netherlands, but they've got offices here in the UK and they really do supply top quality bulbs, and they very kindly gifted me not only these bulbs to plant up, but they've also given me a code that you can use to get 10% off online. It's only on, well, it's on everything online except for accessories and gifts, but that covers a huge wide range. So if you haven't ordered your bulbs yet, then get ordering because it brings so much joy next year. Not only can you get bulbs for spring colour, but you can get other bulbs like alliums that will flower mid-season, and then you can get other bulbs that will flower later in the season. And so you can have constant colour just from some bulbs. I'll put a link in the description below to Peter Nyssen's website and I'll write the code there, but hopefully it's up on the screen as well for you to see. This is the code you can use to get 10% off, which I think is incredible. So I've got all my pots ready and my compost ready, and I'm just going to go through what I've arranged, what I've organised for anyone who's new to planting bulbs and possibly wants a few hints and tips. I'm using multi-purpose peat-free compost for my bulbs, and I have mixed that with sort of exactly the same weight in horticultural grit. Now, horticultural grit is just really tiny broken up stones or gravel, and that is to improve drainage, because the one thing all bulbs dislike is sitting in soggy, wet compost. So if you have rain through the winter months like we do, your compost will get very waterlogged. So it's also important to keep your pots raised off the ground on pot feet or bricks or something so that they drain well, but also make sure that the compost inside your pots has got good drainage. Now, although I've chosen pots to plant my bulbs in, you don't have to plant them straight into pots. You can plant them straight out into the ground in your garden. By all means, do that. There are a couple of reasons why I'm not, but firstly, I'll just say that if you're planting bulbs at this time of year, at the end of September, October, don't plant your tulips yet, because if it's not cold enough, they can become susceptible to something called tulip fire, which is a viral disease, fungal disease, something like that, and they start looking really ugly and get deformed. And the best way to avoid that is to plant them when the weather is much colder. So in England, in the UK, we tend to wait until November, late November, December, but get them in the ground in December in order to have them flowering the right time in the spring. Now, I am planting mine into pots because I want to create a tablescape on our garden table, and I do this every spring. I get a whole load of different Brocante finds, vintagey feel things, and I put them on our table and create something that I love to call a tablescape, even though there's no actual crockery involved, but it's just a load of different things that flower in the spring, and it really brings me so much joy when perhaps the garden is looking a little bit drab and empty. So that reason, but also because our garden is currently full of annuals that are still flowering and dahlias that are still flowering, so there's no room for me to plant bulbs there. But that doesn't matter, because a lot of these are bulbs that will look really good on my tablescape because they're quite short, they're not too tall, so they're all these sort of little miniature plants, so to speak. So the first thing I'm going to do is cover the hole at the bottom of my pot, but it's really important to cover it with something that is curved so that water can still get out of the hole, but it just stops the soil falling through. Or you could balance one stone on top of another, and I'll show you how to do that when I have a pot that I need to do that with. But this is a curved piece of stone. It's actually just a broken pot. So I use that as a crock. And then I'm going to put some of this compost that I mixed into my pot. I am going to be adding some bulb starter at the base, but first I need to make sure that I've got the compost at the right height. And the way I do that, so with bulbs, we want to plant them to at least twice their depth. And so you kind of look at this bulb here. So the next one needs to start there. So actually I've got a bit too much compost in here because I want them to be lower than that. So say this is going to be where my soil finishes. That's one bulb's depth. And then I want the bulb to be nestled in there. So it's at least 2 bulbs deep. What I'm going to do though is add the bulb starter first. So I'm just going to mix this in lightly here into the compost, and then I'm going to pop my bulbs in, and I'm kind of pressing them down into the compost. And when you're planting into pots, you can plant them really closely together, sort of like you would with an egg carton. Like this one's got a baby. So I'm pushing them in, planting them quite closely together, and I can get 5 into this pot. So they look like that. And then just simply cover that over with soil, compost, like that. And then these need watering in, and then you can place them wherever you like. It's best to put them in a sunny spot, if you can find a sunny spot. And also remember to raise them off the ground onto something. Now, if you want to, you can do what I do and cover the surface with grit, because hopefully that keeps the squirrels away. Also, it will stop weed seeds falling on there and germinating, and it's also going to set off the bulbs really nicely. The other thing that I also use is moss to cover the surface, and I'll show you that in the next one that I plant here. So I'm planting exactly the same bulbs in this one. So this is where I'm going to use my 2-stone trick. So we place one stone away from the hole and then balance the other one over the top like that. And that again is creating the gap for water to be able to go out, but preventing all the compost from falling out through that hole. Now the first things I'm planting are a Narcissus or daffodil called Recurvus, which is pheasant eye. And these are absolutely gorgeous. They're fantastic at naturalizing. They're scented, and they're white flowers with this striking orange rimmed central cup. And so they really stand out. They flower for a really long period, and they're going to grow to about between 30 and 50 centimetres tall, so not quite 2 foot at their maximum. They might not grow that tall if they're in pots. This is the moss that I use. I'll put a link in the description below to the one that I really like, but I think that looks really nice and natural. And then in the spring, I was going to call them snowdrops. In the spring, the daffodils are just going to pop up through the moss and look sort of very woodlandy and cute. I think it looks really pretty. And then the other thing that I always do is I label my pots, because quite often the following year I'll want to plant them out into my borders. And so it's really important to me to know what it is I'm planting. This daffodil is a gorgeous mini daffodil. It's called Tete-a-Tete, and it's a lovely, sunny, cheerful yellow colour. They're ever so cute, but they don't grow very tall, maybe 10 to 20 centimetres tall. But they're one of the earliest to flower, which is wonderful, and they really are such a cheerful daffodil. So I'm planting again 2 pots. This one is not high enough. The next thing I'm planting are little mini irises. Now these grow to about 10 to 20 centimetres tall, and they'll flower between February and March. And I've got 2 different varieties. The first one I'm planting is Claret, and it's a gorgeous soft sky blue colour with these dark bluey purple tips that have got spatterings of white markings on them. It's incredibly pretty and just looks a little bit different. And I love that irises are just a different shaped flower to the other spring flowers that we've got. So I love the combination, and I like to have that little bit of blue. I think it's really attractive to have blue amongst all the pinks and whites. So again, I'm planting them really closely together, and these are super easy to plant because they're so small. You can just poke them into the soil if you want to. It's really easy. That's about as close as I want to plant them. And then we just cover them with some more compost. And then this is an iris called Pixie, which is, it's got smaller flowers than most other irises apparently. I guess that's why it's called Pixie. It's a gorgeous, dark, violety blue colour with yellow and white markings on it. And again, it's going to grow to about 10 to 20 centimetres tall. I think that's maximum. But it's got a lovely light fragrance too, apparently, which I think would be really lovely. The next thing I'm planting are these tiny little bulbs here. These are crocus, and again, these would look really good in drifts on the edge of your borders or in the lawn, but I also like to have crocus on my tablescape, so I'm planting these into pots. And they're going to be absolutely gorgeous. They will naturalize so easily. So once you've planted crocus, they will just keep multiplying every single year. And I'm looking at the bulbs quite carefully to make sure I'm getting them the right way up, and just looking for the rooty bit to make sure that I plant that, because sometimes you can't tell which way is up and which way is down, but it just takes a second or two to figure it out. Don't worry too much because, you know, the bulb will find its way. It will just be a little bit slower because it's going to have to do a loop if you've planted it upside down to get itself the right way up. These are Thomasinianus. Did I say that already? So these are a gorgeous bluey colour, verging on sort of dark purpley red with varying colours. So verging on dark purpley red right the way through to pale lilac. And I think they're going to look absolutely gorgeous in here if I can get them planted the right way up. There we go. And again, these are very small, so they don't need to be planted too deeply. And then I'm going to use the moss again to cover it. I think they're going to look so cute popping up through there. These are some more crocus, little mini crocus that I'm planting here. I'm going to put about 8 into each pot, I think. I've got enough for that. I just think these will look really cute sort of scattered about on my tablescape because they're white ones. These are called snow bunting. So they've got little yellow centres at the base of the bulb, but then they're mostly white with like a faint purpley bluish tinge on the outside of the petals. And I don't fuss too much about the arrangement because by the time the bulbs pop up and start flowering, you can't really see that they're in any kind of arrangement at all. You're just looking at the beautiful flowers, so I don't tend to fuss too much. And then the last bulbs I'm planting today, I am actually planting because I can't get them in the ground yet. So I'm planting them in these exceptionally deep pots, but that's because they're huge bulbs and they need to go quite deep. So what I want to do is plant them in here to get them started, get them rooting in, and then once my borders are cleared and I've got the space cleared where I want to put these, then I'll plant them out. And then I'm not going to bother putting plant food in with these. They really don't need it. They've got all this plant food stored up. Oh, did I even say what these are? These are Globemaster alliums. They are spectacular. They have enormous flowers. They grow to about 80 centimetres tall, but the flowers are between 15 and 20 centimetres. Absolute showstoppers. They're kind of an aster violety colour, and once you have them in your garden, they're just going to get bigger over time. So don't panic if they're not huge the first year. So this is how deep I've planted them. I don't know if you can see that. And I'm just going to cover them up with soil. And then with these, I am not going to be covering them with moss or gravel because nothing's going to eat them, I don't think. And they're not for decoration. These are going to go in my nursery, and once they've been watered in, and then they're just going to stay there until I've got space in the borders to plant them. If you're using pots, once they've been watered, it's really important that through the winter they've got the ability to drain. So you could either lift them up on bricks or crooks. I put mine on a pallet, as you can see, so that the drainage holes have got space to drain out, because what the bulbs will not like is if they're sitting, for instance, on a patio and there's nowhere for the water to drain, then those bulbs are likely to rot if we have very wet winters. I'm just wondering whether any of my regular viewers have spotted the little mini wreath that I made with crab apples and other beautiful things. I've hung it up here between the two shed doors, and it's so cute, and I can see it from the kitchen door at the back, and I can see it when I'm washing up, and it's just filling me with joy. I love it so much. I can't tell you how pleased I am with that little mini wreath. If you haven't seen the video where I made these wreaths, then do take a look, because I just think it's a really fun activity to do at this time of year. There are so many things in the garden that dry really well and we can use on wreaths that will last for months or even years. Anyway, that's it for today. I really hope you've had fun with me as I planted some bulbs. There's loads more to do though. I love this time of year because we're already looking forward to next year. And so it's a beginning rather than an ending of the summer. It's a beginning of the new planting season, and that fills me with joy. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.